I always wanted to do that. Forever Youth Pastor, episode 2. My name is Jeremy Herr, and I am forever a youth pastor. And this is a podcast on faith, love, and the power of compounding. And we're going to have a lot of fun just having a conversation centered around like a lot of the things that we as Christians want to talk about. And some of them we talk about. And I want this podcast to have this emphasis of like bringing these things that we don't always talk about together. And so I started last week. And by the way, I had quite a few of you just send such kindness and encouragement. And I'm so thankful for that because this stuff is so scary. This is really scary. Like putting your face on the internet, there's like a trillion people out there that can just think anything they want. And I'm like trying to manage, like, did I say the right thing? Did I do the right thing? I don't know what I'm doing. And so I'm just going to keep going though. And I just want, part of this journey is to like test my own theories on compounding. Like if I do 50 of these, like where could that go and what will that look like and how will episode 35 be better than episode 1 and who's like joined the journey of that along the way. And so almost like this thing, it's like I'm just excited to share some of my thoughts and ideas and things I've learned along the journey of being 21 years a youth pastor at the same church on Eastern Long Island, New York, being married to just this epic tidal force of good in the world named Laura and having just 2 world-changing kids, Christian and Ellie, who are now adults. Like I'm the father of 2 adult children. And so it's just like been a wild journey of like learning all sorts of things about faith and love and the power of compounding. And so this episode 2 of 50, I got a hypothetical scenario for you that's based on a story that I shared with a friend of mine named Lily. She said that every day she drives to school, so 180 school days a year, she stops at Starbucks on her way. And she said usually when she's in there, she'll buy a caffeinated beverage, of course. By the way, why does everyone shoot down Starbucks? It's like people are just relentlessly going in there, but no one's like, hey, I love Starbucks. I kind of love Starbucks. And I kind of love going there with my daughter. It's really fun. And so there's that. But anyway, my friend Lily, she goes there every day, 180 school days, pays $10. And so my mind, like, I am one who thinks about compounding. And I started thinking through what if instead of buying Starbucks every day for 180 school days, she puts that money in the United States stock market, essentially the S&P 500, which is the top 500 stocks, doesn't matter, really doesn't matter, but it's interesting. We'll talk about some more in depth in future episodes. And so like what will happen in 50 years? Like it's like whatever that amount of money ends up at the end versus Starbucks every day. Like that's the choice. And so I ran the numbers. I put it into ChatGPT and I'm going to run it on the screen so you can see the mathematical equation that went into this. And essentially the choice is Starbucks today or $4.98 million at the end of 50 years. So Starbucks today or $4.98 million at the end of 50 years. That's the choice. That's the choice that I make if I'm going in there. By the way, I go in there probably too much, probably spend too much money in there. If instead of going to Starbucks every other day for 180 days a year, you do not do that, you will have $4.98 million at the end of 50 years. That's crazy. That's also like, of course, not going to be as much money in 50 years, but that will still be a lot of stinking money. And that will be over time, like infinite amount of Starbucks. And so it's essentially compounding interest it just works. Like the more that goes into it, the more that compounds over time, that grows and that becomes more and more and more over time. And the same is true with like specific decisions we make over time. If we invest a little bit into growing in this skill and we do it every day for, say, a year, you and I will obviously agree that you'll get so much better at that thing. But here's the thing that's really hard about it is it takes some serious discipline. It's super hard to make that decision on a regular basis. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to delay that gratification and I am going to invest here. And I am going to have the patience, which, by the way, I am not great at patience. When I go down the lists of fruits of the Spirit, I always get to patience. I'm like, that's that's the convicting one. I just I go out of my way to avoid lines. I go out of my way to avoid traffic. I just want things when I want them, to my detriment a lot of times. But the power of compounding does not work if we are not patient. It also does not work if we're not disciplined to do this thing. My son Christian and I were in Japan um, a few months ago, and it was just an incredible trip. We had such an amazing time, created so many great memories together, so many experiences. But one of the really cool things that we did was when we were in Kyoto, Japan. And by the way, Kyoto, Japan. If you have any interest at all in going to Japan, please, please, please make sure when you are there, you go to Kyoto. Maybe make that your first stop because that city is one of the great cities that I have ever been to. It is unreal and so beautiful. And so we're in Kyoto and we just like walk around. It's like bamboo gardens and moss gardens and all these hiking trails and shrines and temples and monuments. It is just Disneyland for adults. It is unbelievable how beautiful the city is. But one of the days we were there, we went to this moss garden. And I just could not believe how meticulously cared for this moss garden was. Just everything seemed to have order. Everything was in place. Like the rocks were raked. The moss was like just manicured and even though moss is not like it just grows wild. This felt like on purpose is the best way I could describe it. And so we're walking around and there's this moment where I stop and I notice this gardener in this moss garden, this Japanese gardener just meticulously on his knees, picking away at the moss, just evening it up, putting the remnants in this little pail and just one by one taking the moss, making it beautiful. And I look at him and then I look at the whole of this moss garden and I think, is this seriously? Is this seriously how he's going to go about this? This is going to take him not days, not weeks, not months, years. This is going to take him decades. I mean, I can't even believe as I'm looking around, it's just him. I mean, I'm sure they have other gardeners, but like, this is just him. He's doing this. This is going to take him forever. I can't even imagine the meticulousness that is his job. But then as I scanned up and looked around, I'm like, no, Jeremy, what I see is actually the power of compounding. It's actually a few people, a few gardeners, everyday decisions on their hands, picking at the moss day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year to make it look like this. And you walk around and nothing is out of place. Everything is on purpose. Everything is so manicured. It's because those gardeners every day made the choice that I am going to be on my hands and knees and I am going to do the work so that every time everyone walks around here, they will see the power of compounding. They will see the vision of my work. A few years ago, I read this article about this dad who had this idea to on his stepdaughter's bedroom door to place some sticky notes on the door. And I thought, that's genius. That's genius. I'm going to do that. And so, like 3, maybe 4 years ago now, I decided that I just wanted to tell my family what I think of them, like, you know, every night. And so I take a few moments. And by the way, I would totally recommend this. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and send photos when you do it. Like, well, not immediately, but like as it accumulates, send photos down the road. Don't send me creepy photos of you and one sticky note. Don't do that. But like as it accumulates, it's incredible. The power, like this is my upstairs hallway leading to our 3 bedrooms. This is what 4 years of accumulation. By the way, our ground is always full of sticky notes because they just fall off eventually. By the way, you got to get the super sticky ones. They're the ones that hold up better. I learned that along the way when they would all just fall off relentlessly. But my point is that every day for the past 4 years, I have had the opportunity to consider who the 3 people in my life are that I care about the most. I take an opportunity to consider who I see that they are, who I believe God created them to be, and I just tell them every night. And the accumulation of doing that for 4 years, there's sticky notes everywhere. But I also know that it's impacted who they believe they are. And I also know that it has had an incredible compounding power in their soul. And it's also helped them to know that, like, when there are voices from outside or voices from even our own voices that say something counter to these things that my husband sees about me, these things that my dad sees about me, then I hopefully will remember, no, this is what I think is true, but what is true is this. Because my dad tells me, because my husband tells me. That stuff matters a lot. And by the way, I'm just going to go a rant on dads because I can, the internet will just let me post this. And so, dads, you have such an important job. Oh my goodness. If I could change one thing in the world, I would just say, dads, show up. Nothing would change the world. No election, no politician, no like social media post by the one who could post to the most people in the world. If like nothing could change the world more than dads just deciding to show up and be dads. Nothing. And so dads, just show up and be dads. Be present. Husbands, please just show up for your wife. Just take responsibilities for the things we need to take responsibilities for and just keep moving ahead. It matters so much. And so over the course of 4 years, my family knows what I think about them. And it matters and it has this compounding. And so I bet if you think about the story that you are living and all the ways in your life that you have tried to like do these things over the series of time, then I know like every January 1st, we all decide we're going to do this thing. Like I woke up January 1st, I'm going to do 50 podcasts. That's number 2. And so like we have all these grand ambitions, but then it's like do we follow through? And we see, maybe if we stick to it for a time, we see the compounding happen. And maybe for some of you, you are like one who saves money and you've seen that happen over time. Some of you are people who like lift weights. Lifting weights is, by the way, such a beautiful, like physical way to see compounding, like the power of compounding. You lift weights every day or 5 days a week for a year, like your body is going to change. You are going to see the result of that. You're going to feel better. You're going to live a healthier life because of that compounding of lifting 5 days a week for a year. You know what this is. But you and I also know that like there's this voice in our head that just calls it all into question and makes us just want to shut it down and makes it just want to stop. And we come up with all sorts of excuses and reasons why we just shouldn't carry forward. And some of them are actually legitimate because it's so hard to like keep going. It's so hard to wake up early every morning to go to the gym. It's so hard to like try to become a writer and like one day write a book. And it's like I about 4 years ago, 5 years ago went on this journey to like try to figure out how to become a writer because I had like this deep ambition of one day like writing a book. And it's like, okay, I don't find myself to be super proficient at writing. I never was one who like wrote a lot. I like talk a lot. I use words a lot. I get in front of people and use my words, but like writing the words, it was just something that I used to kind of get through college, right? But about 4 years ago, about 4.5 years ago, I just decided like, no, I'm going to write. And so I started reading books by writers to try to figure out like, I might as well like read from the masters. By the way, another side note, just read. Reading changes us in some incredible ways. Like if you read a few books a year, 10 books a year. I've got this legendary friend named Mitch who read like 92 books this year. And it's like, I'm trying to follow in that. Like I'm trying to read like that. And so like you grow over time reading and learning and figuring these things out. So like I'm gonna be a writer and I'm gonna like learn the greats. I'm gonna learn from the greats. I'm gonna go find out what they said. And so I read books like by Stephen King and Ernest Hemingway and John Steinbeck. And along the way, I learned that the best pencil in the world, right here, Blackwing pencils, best pencil in the world. All the greats used to write with Blackwing pencils. Steinbeck, Hemingway, they all would rush to the store to get Blackwings. They're the best. And so every one of those people who wrote on writing said one thing, essentially. Their book, I'll summarize all their books by saying, if you want to become a writer, just write every single day. And so I took them really seriously and I just started writing like every single day. And here's the thing. When you write every single day, two things happen. You become a lot more proficient at it, but it also teaches you like how to think thoughts because writing has this way of like piecing together your thoughts. And it also helps your thoughts to become like formulated ideas. And so for 4 years, I've just been putting these things down, and some of it like would be considered journaling, like I'm having a bad day, and here's why. Here's how I stepped on it today with my wife. Here's how I screwed up as a dad. And then the next week later is like, hey, here's a victory with my relationship with my wife, and here's some good things that happen, and with my kids. And so you just like write your thoughts, like what's happening and what's going on. But then I would also like have these ideas that I just turned into like real tangible things as I wrote them out. And so the craziest thing, I've not written a book that's publishable. And one day I will, probably. It's an ambition I have. But what I decided to do was just like print out these like every year, just print out the stuff that I wrote that year as kind of like proof of compounding that like if you write every day, this is what it will become. And so like 2022, here's a book, by the way. That's a great story that we will tell one day soon. That is my son, and that is me, and that is an awesome story. But this is 2022, and these were my thoughts. Like, that's it. And 2023 and 2024, my daughter, another beautiful story to be told. Like, just 3 books. And again, nobody will ever see those. I mean, those are my thoughts. Those are my ideas. They're just a mixed match of like journal entries and different things. But the point is if you write every day, like you can have like 3 hefty books. And along the way, you become someone who like can write. And so, by the way, like I am dead serious. You will enter into such a gift into your life if you just decide to write every day or even every couple of days, but have like a real routine with it. Like take the thoughts and ideas and just like put them onto paper and you will find it will change you. It will transform you. This podcast is a podcast on transformation, on growth, on compounding, and you will grow. You will transform. And so back to compounding. The choice of the question is like Starbucks today or $4.98 million in 50 years. The problem is you have to wait. But here's the thing, and let's take a very practical example. In 2008, if someone were to invest in Apple because they see Steve Jobs the year prior putting out the iPhone, it's like, oh, that could be like a legendary product, right? That could be a product that is really going to sell. Turns out is the number 1 selling product in all of human history. There's never been a commercial item that has sold more than the Apple iPhone. And so if you made that bet in 2007, 2008, here is a stock chart of Apple stock that has happened. The compounding that would have happened over that time is like you would turn a little money into a lot of money. It would just compound like unnecessarily in orders of magnitude and become just this massive number. But here's the thing on that journey for someone who may have even invested in Apple, the best singular stock in those years is there were times that you would want to bail. You'd want to sell because like if you got in 2007, the iPhone comes out, you're like, hey, I'm just going to print cash. This is amazing. Oh, 2008, 2009, 2010, even into 2011, the United States of America had this like great recession. It was a really, really difficult time, I'm sure, for even many of you. It was a difficult time across the world. It was certainly a difficult time here in America. And so you would have been tempted to, and I'm sure many people were, to sell that stock because it's like it made some money and then you just lost maybe many percentages more than what you like put into it. You were like backwards on it. But then the craziest thing happened is like from 2010 almost to today, maybe leading up to about COVID time, Apple, give or take, like minus some ebbs and flows along the way, has just been on this like historic run. And then, of course, COVID, the world shuts down and it drops instantly. But then, like as we've seen these last few years, it just, I think a couple of weeks ago, hit an all-time high. And so if you had it that whole time, you've experienced just this unbelievable run. But if you rode that journey, you would have at many moments been tempted to sell that stock. And in some moments, like it probably would have seemed like the right thing to do. But you would have had to time it perfectly. And chances are people didn't. If people sold, they got out in the wrong time, got back in at the wrong time, and it would not have nearly been effective and compounded in the way that it would if you bailed in those low seasons. And so I say all that to not talk about Apple stock, but I say all that to compare it to our Christian journey. And it's like the power of compounding works in our faith in Jesus as well. I think the power of compounding is just as simply another way of transformation over time, but it's based on regular investments, regular disciplines, regular habits over time. And that is when we transform, and that's when we change. The Apostle Paul says, like, put off the old self and put on the new self. The old has gone, the new has come. He tells us to be transformed in the renewing of our mind. And so all these things, it's like the old is out and the new has come. We change, we transform over time. But just like Apple stock, here's the thing. And you know this if you've been on this journey with Jesus. You go through some highs and some lows, and there's times where you just pile up so much shame on yourself because you feel so distant from God. You feel disconnected. You feel alone. You feel like you just haven't done enough, that you don't have what it takes. And there's that voice in your head that you just convince yourself like there's always more to do and you're never like good enough to do it. Or like the things that you know are the things that you should do that are like healthy disciplines and habits to like live out your faith and grow and transform. You know, you've like just gotten out of the habits, and there's been seasons, long seasons, where you just maybe pile up shame on yourself. I got good news. That literally happens to all of us. I'm a pastor of 21 years, and that is my journey. That is totally my journey. There has been many, many months where I questioned the whole thing, where I doubted, where I wondered. I would go weeks and weeks at a time without even opening a Bible. Imagine the shame that us pastors would feel, like trying to lead people in their Christian faith and realizing like, I haven't even opened my Bible in weeks. We go through that too. And there's been times where it's like, man, am I even worthy of doing this? Am I even being worthy of being a son or daughter of the one true living God? We ask ourselves these things and we wonder. But the reality is like, Jesus has never asked for our perfection. He just wants us to keep transforming. He just wants us to keep growing. He just wants us to keep compounding in the ways that we're following Him and serving Him. That's what He wants from us. And it's like, it's so freeing that like we don't have to be held captive by those voices in our head. Like we can just continue on the journey, even if right now you are at this really low point and you're just wondering like, Jeremy, how could I like get out of this? Well, the start to get out of it is just start moving again. Just start like taking a step forward. It's like whatever that is, like pray a couple of words today. Just start with like, God, thanks. And then shut it down. I just open your Bible up and read a verse. Like talk to a friend you trust and like open yourself up to that journey you're going through. Like there is only shame there if you let it. Like the dirty secret shame has on us is it only has a thing on us if we let it. And so like sometimes those voices in our head, they're real voices. But maybe more times than not, they're not real. Like we have this thing in our house, and I'm going to bring this up a lot in these conversations. But anytime someone in our house says, they will think that, especially if it's like a question mark. Will they think that? They will think that. We always ask each other the question, who is the they? And we make the person who's saying they name who the they is. And like 90% of the time, the person in our family who gets that called into question can't name it. Like, we can't name it. We're like, oh, the they is shame. The they is in my head. The they is this hypothetical person who I think is judging me in this way, but the deeper reality is the they is shame. It's not actually a real person. And so I wonder how much that affects our journey. Like a great recession, global great recession knocked Apple stock down. I wonder like what's our equivalent and like where are you at right now? Like are you that Apple stock of like the last 3 years that's just been this like rocket ship? Or are you just kind of like down there in your great recession period? Are you somewhere along this journey? Like ask yourself this question. And then ask yourself the questions like, what can I do to start moving again? What can I do to like daily start to make these disciplines to like keep going? And who can I journey with? Like, I am like, we need a journey together. We need to be together. The very best thing about church is that we get to journey together with other people. And the more honest we are, the more open we are, the more vulnerable we are with what's actually going on and not like what we want other people to think is going on. Like, I just want to say this again because this is like a huge story of my life. Like I got so concerned with how I wanted people to think I was versus how I actually was. And so I wonder for you, it's like, are you hiding behind that like mask of like, no, I'm great. Like, praise God, things are going so good. And if you are, that's fantastic. Just be fully honest about that. And by the way, tell stories of the grace of God. Tell stories of like the great things that God is doing. I think we really, I know myself, I get into this like slippery slope of like false humility when like things are actually going really well, where I'm like, no, like I want to like mute that out because I don't want to seem like, oh, I'm doing great and this person I'm talking to might not be doing great. No, like honor God with things that are great when they're great. Like that's something that really like I need to work on in that because there's like such grace when we just tell like the truth, like the unvarnished, unfiltered truth. And we try to be aware and you try to be sensitive to what other people are going through, but like when we're in the dumps, like, let's be honest about that. And when things are going well, let's be honest about that. And when there's somewhere in between, let's be honest about that. And I think that that will just be like this continued theme into like future episodes of this podcast. Like, we're just going to try to be as honest as possible. And you're just like, I'm just going to try to like put stuff out there and like, you can agree with me or you can disagree with me. And like, it's totally great. It's actually totally great. I'm trying to like bring back like this nuance into the conversation. I feel like we're so quick to like say this is good and this is bad and we need to do more of this. We need to stay away from this. Like, no, like there's like good in all of it. There's bad in all of it. And like we just need to like figure out like the stuff that helps us to keep moving forward and to be honest about our journey. And so that's episode 2. We're gonna land there. And if you got this far, if you got this far, either you're one of two people. You seriously love me and thank you. Seriously. The people in my life, you included, because you made it this far. I seriously am so grateful. I just find myself in this wake of incredible human beings who like encourage me and help me and cheer me on. And you, if you're 34 minutes into this, you are one of those people. And so thank you for being my friend. The other the other kind of person who made it this far is now my friend because like you're on a journey and that is epic. Seriously, keep going. It's so good. Just keep transforming. If you made it this far, you are a legend. Like seriously. You are so I just think you are the coolest kind of person that is just like wanting to figure this stuff out and wanting to grow. And I'm if I can just help you in just some small way along this journey, like let's grow together and that will be epic. And so maybe a part of this routine is I'm just going to have an epic rant at the end, like the last minute to all of you that made it this far. Like you are legends. And I'm going to shout you out every time because you deserve it. Thank you. Episode 2 out. Nope, that was so weird. Don't do that, Jeremy. Do something better. Bye.